my Christmas gifts this year was a new fountain pen, and I just wanted to make a short video so I could show it to you while it's all shiny and new before I start using it and make it all dirty. So this is not a full review or anything, but I just wanted to take a closer look at it. It's an Esterbrook Estie, and while I've admired these pens for quite some time, I didn't really know much about them, and I certainly didn't know that it's the type of pen that Charles Schulz used to draw the original Peanuts cartoon, Snoopy. And with last October having marked the 75-year anniversary of the Peanuts cartoon, Esterbrook have brought out a range of anniversary editions featuring some of the Peanuts gang. I've loved Snoopy for, well, as long as I can remember, since I was a little girl, not quite 75 years, thank you for asking. But having been a lifelong fan of Snoopy, Charlie Brown, all things Peanuts, and of fountain pens, this was obviously a really thoughtful gift for me. As you can see, the one I've got is the Charlie Brown edition. It comes in this lovely presentation box, and the pen itself is yellow, black and white in the Charlie Brown colours. And if you look closely, you can see that it's actually got a little clip with Charlie Brown on there, and on the nib it's engraved with Good Grief. So what else is in the box? Well, it also came with a cartridge. Probably won't use that. I'm not sure what sort of ink they put in there, but it's probably not water resistant, and I want to put a watercolour wash over the top. But it did come with a converter included, so I can fill that with whatever ink I like. I'll probably use my usual platinum carbon. It also came with this cleaning cloth, which is Charlie Brown's t-shirt, which is really cute. I'm certainly not going to be wiping permanent black ink up with that. I'm not sure what I'll use it for, but I'm not going to use it for ink. So it's quite a heavy pen. I've been using plastic Sailor Food Aid Manon pen lately, so using a metal pen is going to be quite different. I'm really looking forward to trying it out. And to keep it nice and scratch free, I also got this Peanuts character pen case. This one's got Sally on it, Charlie Brown's sister. So I'll keep it in there. And also a couple of clips for holding my sketchbook open on windy days. They are quite heavy, so I'm not sure how practical they'll be, but they're pretty cute. So now all that's left to do is fill it up and try it out. I'm using platinum carbon water-resistant ink, which is my normal brand of ink that I nearly always use, to be honest. And today I thought I'd fill it up slightly differently by submerging the converter into the ink bottle rather than the nib, mainly because I wanted to keep it nice and clean. This didn't entirely go to plan, as you can see, because as I was turning it to fill the converter, it actually unscrewed the converter itself, and I think I ended up making more mess than I would have if I'd done it the normal way. Oh no. But never mind, I quickly washed my hands and had another go, and everything was fine, and I managed to get about just over half full. I don't seem to ever be able to get a converter to fill up completely when I fill it up for the first time. Hopefully that's enough for a first sketch. Well, I found myself in Manningtree. It is really cold, but I really want to try out this pen, so let's see how we get on. This is actually a scene that I've sketched before, and much as I'd have liked to have sketched a different view, maybe of some of the shops in the high street, for example, it really was quite cold, so I wanted to sit somewhere in the sun. This then presented the problem that with the sun being so low, it was quite hard to see what I was sketching without sort of being blinded by the sun. So eventually I found a spot where I was kind of behind a tree, as you can see in the corner of the picture. And I sketched this little gallery and the cottages next to it. The last time I sketched this scene, I made an executive decision not to put that car in that was sitting in front of the building on the left. And I usually have this unwritten rule to myself that if I can guess what's behind a car, then I'll leave the car out. But if I can't, then I put it in. And I thought I could guess, and I got the steps all wrong. I just got the perspective wrong. So I put the car in today and the ones in front of it. I just left them really, really plain though, and white. I didn't add any colour to them. So they didn't distract from the focal point, or detract from the focal point, should I say. But I put them in because they were blocking things and I couldn't see what was behind there. And I often find that with urban sketching, it's all about making decisions what to leave in and what to leave out. And that's entirely up to you. No one else is probably going to be sitting in that exact spot and then criticise you and say, well, you've put an extra wall in there or you've missed a flower pot out. And if they do, you might want to rethink who you hang out with. But seriously, it's all about making little decisions and artistic license. And if you don't want to put it in, don't put it in. If you don't put it in because you don't think you can draw it, well, that's a different matter. And I think I'm going to do a video about that because there's certain things that I really do not like drawing. And one of those is garden benches. And you can see there's a garden bench in this view here, but we can only see a little bit of it. But there are certain things that I find quite tricky to draw and sometimes avoid them. So I do try to make a point of finding ways to simplify them so that I don't avoid them anymore. So if you've got any little things that you really find tricky and try to avoid drawing, stick them in the comments if you like, and perhaps it's something that we can look at in another video and ways that can perhaps make them easier, simplify them. What I'm doing here on the roof, and I also do it on the wall a bit too, is just adding some very light, random horizontal lines and then just a few vertical, slightly sloping ones, bigger on the roofs than on the brickwork. And it just implies that there's bricks and roof tiles there without me drawing them all in. And it breaks up that colour a bit. So when I come to add the watercolour wash, you won't just have a big block of one colour of brown or brick colour. It just makes it a little bit more interesting and a bit more textured. And like I did with the cars, the buildings to the far left and again to the far right, they're not my focal point, but I don't want these buildings that are my focal point to look like they're just floating in midair. So I'm just doing very, very light shapes just to hint at the roofs so that you can see that there are surrounding buildings, but they're not really part of my main sketch. I haven't really said much about the pen while I was sketching that, but it was lovely to use, really smooth, felt really good in my hand, nice weight. Obviously they do lots of other designs and they do some lovely resin ones. If you're not interested in the Peanuts side of it and the 75-year anniversary, which of course not everybody's going to be, the pen itself you can get in completely different designs. The paints I'm using are the Winsor & Newton Pocket Field Box, the professional range, and I'm using an Escoda size 12 travel brush. I did talk on the camera a little bit, but it was quite windy and I didn't have my microphone on. But basically, I started with the light blue because I didn't want to muddy it up with any other colours. So I started with that house first, and I apologise that the palette is not in shot. To be honest, I was getting really cold at this point and decided that if I was going to start moving things around like the camera and where I was sitting, if I moved anywhere, then it was going to be back to the car and come home. So I apologise for that, but this is a very, very loose wash that I put on here because my hands are starting to go a bit numb, to be honest. I did contemplate going home to finish it, but I thought, no, I will finish it while I'm here because it was lovely sitting there. I was really enjoying it, but this is probably much looser than I usually do. I was letting the paints blend into each other more than usual because, well, I couldn't really be bothered to wait for them to dry. And I quite like the effect. I quite like it being that loose sometimes. So I'm not disappointed with the end result, but it's probably a bit looser than I would normally do. There's a lot of wet on wet here. Not necessarily intentional, but it wasn't going to dry very quickly either, so it's pretty impossible to get any definite shadows. So that's one thing I will say about the end result. It probably hasn't got quite so much depth because, I just could not really get those dark shadows. And I often say, perhaps I'll add them later when I get home, and I rarely do, to be honest. Occasionally I'll add a few highlights. So the colours can end up looking a little washed out and perhaps insipid in places. But it's a loose sketch. It's not meant to be a masterpiece that's going to be hanging up in a gallery. You can see here what happened when I tried to add some shadow. It was pretty futile, really, and ended up pretty wishy-washy. So at this point, I decided to just add a little bit of colour onto the reflections of the window panes and then pack up and call it a day and go back home to the warm. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for supporting my channel throughout 2025. It's kind of my first year of doing YouTube properly, and hopefully it's the first of many. So thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I wish you all the best for 2026. I hope you have lots of sketching adventures. Thanks for watching and Happy New Year.